I can feel it. There's like crunchy bits in the bottom. Ugh. As you can see, we have a second sail drive. Now, just to clarify, the motor sitting on top is usually referred to as the motor, and then the propeller comes off the back. This 90-degree elbow with the gears and bearings in it is referred to as the sail drive. So, the issue we were having with this one is there's a bearing or some gears in here that you can hear obviously aren't healthy. This sail drive came off of a catamaran that actually suffered a pretty severe lightning strike. And there's a good possibility that lightning came out through these sail drives because they were the last piece of metal in the water. We're not entirely sure what's wrong inside of this sail drive. It's usually less expensive to rebuild one of these than it is to buy a whole new one, but all of these parts inside are proprietary to Oceanvolt. They build all of this stuff. So it's not like we can walk into a store and find replacement parts. Rebuilding this one would have required us to send it into Oceanvolt and have them pull it apart and figure out what's wrong with it. And buying a whole new one is pretty expensive, but Oceanvolt agreed to give us a pretty good deal on it and overnight it to us so we could install it and get back on the water quickly and have a nice new unit that we know everything inside is good to go. It's also a newer design, and they actually made it 50 millimeters longer, so it's actually going to solve the other problem we were having with prop clearance. So overall, it was worth it for us to just go ahead and get the new one. We've flushed the motor and we know there's no more metal left inside in the cooling system. All I have to do now is re-bolt this one on, fill it back up with oil, and we should be up and running. I'm gonna hold this up. Well, I'll get you a pad. All right, the new sail drive is all installed. It sounds good and it moves smoothly. So I'm gonna go put some transmission oil and then give it a little test spin. If everything sounds good, then we'll put the prop back on and put some anti-foul back on, and tomorrow we'll be ready to launch.
Cool. By the way, there's a brewery right on the other side.
So before we go back in the water tomorrow morning, I'm gonna put a coat of prop anti-fouling on. This one's called, what is this one called? Pelliclean. It's very similar to Prop Speed, which we put on last year when we hauled out. And it held up for about 9 months or so without ever having to clean the prop. So it's definitely worth it. The best part is over here in Europe, it's about 4 times cheaper than it is in the United States. This one only costs about 70 euro. So I think that's worth it for not having to clean the prop for almost a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we were back in the water and everything went smoothly. No leaks, nothing out of the ordinary. We got the backstay back on, the rig's tuned back up again, and it's time to do a motor test. Hopefully it's quieter. That is a lot quieter than it was before. You can hear like the motor spinning and you can hear the water moving, but there's no like sound from the sail drive anymore, so that's really good. Look at all that water going out behind us.
Is that full speed?
Yeah, that was pretty much full speed, so that would be about 5.5, 6 knots worth of, I mean it goes faster, but we'll see on a sea trial how fast we actually can go. It's not having to push through some grindy bad bearings or gears, so we're probably going to get even more efficient numbers than we were looking at before. The prop is also 5 centimeters lower, so we're not going to get as much drag from the hull. And we're also leaving the old sail drive here so that they can send it back into Oceanvolt and they can pull it apart and see what was wrong with it. Because as far as we know, they've installed around 400 of these motors over the last 4 or 5 years, and I think this is the first one that's gone bad. So they're gonna pull it apart and figure out what went wrong so they can see if there's something they can do about it in the future. This town is absolutely adorable.
Yes. Those streets are so tiny. You don't even know that it's big enough for cars until you see a car coming by and you're like, oh.
All of a sudden there's a car in front of you.
Yeah.
There's no room around it. Everything is like so walkable and so friendly, and there's little dogs walking around and parks and kids swimming and people playing and boats.
It is a very old town, but you can feel the history because all the buildings are, like, they look old, they're bricks, and then the roads are so tiny because back in the days you didn't really have cars.
Yeah, just carts and donkeys and people walking. It's fantastic. It's definitely worth looking up if you're interested in all the history and why this town's important. There's a
Dino. So what's going on today?
Today we are going out for a bit more sea trialing with the new motor, or with the new sail drive and a nice clean prop, and we're going to get some better numbers. And we've got George with us today, who also is a Pearson 36 owner, which is right around the corner. And he's helped us out a bunch since the very beginning with all the fiberglass work, with knowledge and shared knowledge, we'll put it that way, because you had some issues with your boat similar to ours. Yeah. Have you been on an electric boat before?
Never.
All right, well, this is gonna be fun. All right, George, you can probably pull that line off. All right, we're off. It's much quieter. I can't even hear the RPM anymore. I have to like actually check the screen to make sure the motor's spinning. Yeah.
Oh shit. Didn't even know it was on.
No. Bridge is open and away we go.
1649. This building.
It's crazy.
So yeah, we're doing 8 kilowatts right now. We're doing 6 knots. Passing.
Very good.
We can probably push more. We also have 12 knots of wind on the nose.
12 knots of wind, but I think we're headed into the wind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, 9 knots of wind. Smoking!
How weird is it that we're not, like, it's kind of the opposite right now, like somebody else is sailing and we're motoring.
Right? We're the ones that are motoring it now. We're out for a motor test, so the sails will not come out today. You hear wind noise right now more than anything else. 6.5 knots, 11 kilowatts. It's pretty sweet. And then I can check the motor voltage, control RPM, motor temperature's good.
How many, can you tell me amps the motor's using?
200 at 48 volts. 800 amps at 12 volts. Yeah, but it's all lithium and all of our cables this big, so it's built for it.
Oh, yeah.
But that's, we're doing 6.5 knots.
That's perfect.
Which is, well, we can only do that for an hour before our batteries are dead.
One advantage to the diesel, I have to say, is I can motor for 2 days.
Yeah, that's true.
And if I'm going on a long tour,
yeah. How big is your tank? Is it still the stock one?
It's 20 gallons.
20 gallons?
Yeah, but I carry another 20-25 gallons
right.
in the cabin.
Yeah, because that little tank that was under here, that only lasts for what, like?
A day.
A day?
Yeah.
So motoring at like 4.5, 5 knots?
I get between, 5 knots, I get between half and 1 liter
okay.
an hour, I think.
That's not bad.
No,
that's actually pretty good. Yeah, we never got to experience a diesel on this boat. It never worked from day one.
But it's loud. I haven't done any sound insulation in the engine department, and it's loud. With noise canceling headphones, it's no problem.
Right.
Look at all these boats, man.
I've been feeling restless. This city is relentless. It wears me down and leaves me dry. I could use some water somewhere that I can wander.
This is so much quieter than it was before. Like, I can't even hear I can feel the motor in my feet, but I can't hear it in my ears. The wind noise is too loud.
And it's a water-cooled electric.
Yeah, it's liquid-cooled. So it has oil that circulates through the sail drive and down into the big aluminum sail drive, and that's what keeps it cool. But it's all sealed internally, so there's no like raw water running through it. There's no through hulls.
You have to check it. You have to check the fluid level from time to time.
Yes, because our last one of the other problems was that it was leaking somewhere because the O-ring or something wasn't right, or it was leaking somewhere. So yeah, we do have to check it from time to time. But theoretically, you never have to like top it up. Theoretically, if everything's the way it's supposed to be, which isn't always the case. All right, we're gonna turn, we're gonna turn beam on. Beam, 12 knots, like 3 kilowatts. That's like as quiet as our old motor was. Now shaft drive. So far we did 1.5 kilowatts, which is sort of like our base. If we're ever motoring anywhere, that's sort of as low as we go. And we were doing 3.5 knots, so like slightly faster than before, but it's kind of hard to tell with these conditions because it's actually blowing 10 knots in the beam. And now we're doing 2.5 kilowatts instead of 3. And we're doing almost 4.5 knots. It's the same thing that like when you're going in reverse, it also doesn't flip down because the centrifugal force of spinning the prop open keeps it open. So in forwards, you just put it in like 50 or 100 RPM, and then it kind of slowly spins. And then as you sail faster than 5 knots, it spins fast. It's like coasting downhill on a bike. Yeah. It works pretty well.
So eventually it overcomes the input of the electricity.
Yeah, right around 4.5, 5 knots we start getting like 50 watts, and then above that it goes more. Getting the exact same numbers on our down and our back. We're kind of motoring along on a beam reach so that the wind's not really playing much effect, and we're in a freshwater lake, so there's zero current. Even though there is wind today, it's still a pretty good day to do this test. And it is significantly quieter than the other one. It doesn't have that sort of chug-chug, rattly, snappy sound that the old sail drive did. It just has that nice whir of the electric. Doing 6.5 knots. 6.5 motherfucking knots!
Motor, not the same thing.
A normal electric. We're doing this. What are we doing today?
Well, George came on our boat yesterday. We showed him a little bit how our motor operates on a Pearson, and today we are on his Pearson, and he's gonna show us the difference between our electric motor and his diesel.
What kind of diesel motor do you have, and is it original?
Yanmar 3GM30F. Look for your earplugs.
So not original.
All right,
Yeah.
let's do this.
Originals were atomic 4s.
Yeah, so the 28 horse, yeah.
I bought this boat specifically because I had a Yanmar with 100 hours.
Nice.
It's not that loud.
The trick, go below. The trick is, try to sleep. The trick is to get it start quickly without that peep. And then when you shut it down as quickly without the peep. So the neighbors.
It's the peep that's the loudest. I know.
It's a sign of an amateur.
That's just to tell you that your key is on, though, right? Like that's not.
No oil pressure alarm.
Okay. Gotcha. What do you think of this unnatural fog, Captain Kika?
It's so foggy. It's so different than yesterday, right? Yesterday was sunny and clear, and now.
What do you guys like to do? Would you like to go through the town harbor, do a circle? There's not much to see out there.
Yeah, sure, we can do that. Just going like a little bit this way and then come back a little bit the other way.
See something.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's very spooky out here today.
It's a natural fog.
You can feel the vibration of the entire boat all the way up to the bow. So this is what it sounds like inside. It's a little loud. Is this full volume? So this is full throttle right now. But it's also vibrating a lot, so you can actually see the water in the sink vibrate. I can't hear anything they're saying in the cockpit, by the way.
Yeah, I closed all mine up, and the damn thing makes the engine compartment so hot.
I can't hear any of you from inside.
No, it's loud, isn't it?
It's loud.
No, I think that's the cool part, though. I was just talking with George about, like, we never knew what our boat sounded like with a diesel because we never had one. And so we've been on other people's boats that have like newer catamarans or something where the engines are in the back, they're well insulated, they're well cooled, and we've never really been on older boats with older diesel setups with like no sound insulation, you know, like what our boat would have sounded like if we kept our diesel. So yeah, this is definitely an interesting experience. Definitely a lot louder. It's not too bad out here though. But I can see why people have to like yell to the bowman when they're coming in to anchor or something like that, because like
as a rule.
Yeah, down here it's hard to hear.
You should go to the bow and see if I can hear you.
Yeah.
Start with whisper.
Hey Dan, this is the conversation we would have This is the you're not talking. Talk as if we would talk on our boat.
You'll be able to hear me fine.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not as loud for me as it is for you. It's a really cute little harbor though. Yeah, I love it. Slow ride. Take it easy. Well, we're not even close to full throttle right now, so it's not actually that loud. It's quieter than we were expecting, to be honestly. Down below, it's definitely louder, but out here, you know, we can still carry on a normal conversation. We're cruising along at like 3.5 knots or so. I mean, aside from the sound and maintenance part of having a diesel, really the only difference between electric and diesel is range. These ones originally come with a 20-gallon tank, which is enough to motor at like 5 knots all day for 24 hours. If we're motoring at 5 knots, we can go maybe 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours. So that's really the only difference as far as like practical use is just range.
It's much louder though.
Yeah, well, it's definitely louder. And I'm sure you have a maintenance schedule on this thing too, right?
I just change the oil twice a season.
That's not bad.
And oil filters once a season. And engine oil. Yeah, change that.
Have you ever had that weird algae stuff that apparently can grow in diesel fuel? Is that a thing, or is that only in the tropics?
They cleaned my tank when they changed engines in 2005.
Okay.
I use biocides in the diesel fuel, and I use premium diesel when I can get it. I try to avoid that. Try to keep water out of the. I keep the tank full, and certainly in the wintertime, keep condensation from forming.
That's like a hefty throttle. You gotta get some muscle into it.
Well, that's because unfortunately it used to slip back.
Right. That's like
cable. So you have to. I have it crimped down fairly strongly.
Now I get when people go on our boat and they're like, oh my gosh, like it's so sensitive. We're like, oh my gosh, what's the difference? And then you get the big one down here, purr, you know.
That was where it used to be.
So what do you think so far?
Yeah, it's very interesting to be on our same boat but with a diesel, because we've been on other boats with diesels, but it's never easy to compare one to the other because, you know, the soundproofing and the engine placement and the engine, everything's different. It's a nice little foot vibration. It's interesting.
A foot massage?
A little foot massage.
If you sit down, it's a butt massage.
Like
Yeah.
Wow. You gained yourself a lot of room taking out that whole cabinet.
Oh yeah.
There's your famous blackboard. Now, wait a minute, did you move this whole side back like that?
Yeah, this one too. We moved this one back about 6 inches. Doing some stuff.
So what did you think overall between your boat and our boat?
Your boat's quieter. I like the redesign you've done. I mean, a lot of the guys in the Pearson blog on Google Groups are howling about this thing's so heavy, blah, blah, blah.
We're still sitting on our factory waterline, believe it or not.
I think you've done a great job. You have good design taste, and
we like her.
We do.
Yeah. I hope you keep her in good condition a long time.
We plan to.
Yeah. She's now our dream boat. People always ask us what our dream boat is, but it's this one now because it's everything we want and we're not in debt, so.
Yeah.
That's fine.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I hope to see you again in a year or two somewhere.
Yeah, maybe down in Biscay or down to the Med. That'd be fun. Yeah. You know, do a match race.
Right?
So as you guys could tell by our tests, the new sail drive is significantly quieter than the last one. And we were able to get some new numbers. One of the things that always kind of bugs us is that people assume that electric motors are silent, and manufacturers tend to market them as silent. And although they are significantly quieter than a diesel, they're certainly not silent. There's a lot of moving parts, and the propeller in the water and things vibrate.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to convey on camera just because like the way the microphone picks up sound is a lot different than the way our ears pick up sound. But I hope we did a pretty good job kind of showing the difference between the two.
On a diesel, on a boat with a diesel motor, you hear the diesel so much more that you don't really pay attention to the extra sound, like the propeller,
and,
the transmission, the actual gears of everything. But the main difference that we've noticed when we were on George's boat and between his boat and our boat was mainly inside the cabin. On our boat, we could have a conversation out to the cockpit, no problem.
Pretty straightforward. Like they just plug in and you wire them just like you would 12 volt, and you.
On George's boat, I could barely hear what they were talking about in the cockpit, and I was literally sitting like on the steps.
Yeah, I closed all mine up, and the damn thing makes you.
Out in the cockpit, like we said, it was quieter than we were expecting it to be out in the cockpit. Just because like the wind noise and everything else going by, and there's some fiberglass between us. But yeah, down below is.
It's a big difference. And I think it's interesting because we've never been on, like we've said in the video, we've never been on the similar boat with a diesel, because when we bought the boat, the diesel didn't work. So we started with the electric motor, and that's all we had for the past 6 years.
Yeah.
And so like being able to make that comparison was very mind awakening. Very useful.
Very useful in our brains.
Yeah.
I'm glad we went the way we did. And on camera, it's really hard to pick up the difference between sound, because the audio that the camera records is so much different than the audio that you hear, and the way that your brain processes that audio. So to be a little bit more scientific about it, if you're audio nerds out there, we downloaded an app on the phone that we can record the audio level. I mean, I'm sure it's not super accurate, but it was sort of a baseline to get an idea of the different sounds between both boats.
This one, right here.
Yeah, it's a cool little app. While we were out motoring on both boats, we did a couple of tests. One just right in front of the engine compartment, one sort of middle of the cabin, and then one out in the cockpit. And just as a base level, just sitting at the dock, you know, without anything running inside of our boat, it's around 24 to 30 decibels. That's just sort of ambient sounds. And then if we start to have like a louder conversation, it starts to get up into like the 40s. And if we're talking really, really loud, it's going to be up into like the 60s.
So we're not going to scream any louder than this. But our entire frequencies were all about like whispers and small conversation levels, where on George's boat, it was all about like yelling and shouting and loud noises.
Like you said, though, his boat has no sound insulation. It is an old boat, and that to us was the most interesting part, because we'd been on other boats where, like, newer boats, newer engines, better insulated engine compartments, on catamarans where they're in the transoms, and they're much quieter. So that's why it was an interesting test for us to be on two like identical boats with different setups. The other thing we were doing out on our motor test was getting some more numbers to do range versus power curves. New Oceanvolt with the new sail drive is about 25% more efficient than our electric beak was, pretty much across the power curve. And it was about 15 or 16% more efficient than it was with the old rattly broken sail drive. So we actually did see a pretty significant increase in efficiencies there. And we've also been able to test.
Focus, because it looks like it's focusing on the board behind me.
Oh shit, I think it is. We've also been able to test out the regen a couple of times, and by the time we're sailing at about 5 knots, we're getting around 50 watts of regen, and that's power back into our battery bank. And then when we get up to like 6.5 to 7, that goes up to 200 to 250. Above 7, we're seeing around 300 watts pretty consistently. And then we've surfed down a couple of waves and have seen up to 550 and 600 momentarily while we were surfing. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because ideally, we're not trying to get our batteries up from 0% all to 100%. What we're looking for really is our battery would be somewhat charged when we leave, and the regen would just keep it topped off, so we're not losing any power when we're sailing. So by the time that we make it to the next port, our batteries are not depleted, but our batteries are basically what it would have been from the day that we leave.
Exactly.
It was still really, really cool to be on George's boat, because as we said before, it is the exact same boat. He has a 1972 Pearson 36 and we have a 1972 Pearson 36. He has done a lot of work on his own boat as well, but he's kept the original layout. So if you guys are wondering what our boat looked like before all the renovation that we did, this is pretty much it. It was like taking a trip back memory lane when we saw his boat.
There's projects we've done on our boat that we've actually completely forgotten about, and then going on his boat, we're like, oh yeah, there was like a pole here, and like, oh, there was a shelf there, and like
there was a table in the middle of the cabin.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It was a lot of fun being on a sister ship and taking it out for a bit bit of a spin.
Yeah, and if you guys want to see a bit of an evolution process of what we did on our boat, definitely click that binge watch button. And if you want to continue seeing our adventures, then definitely click that little subscribe button at the corner, I think somewhere here.
It's not
or
okay.
here, or I don't really know. I think it's down here. So subscribe, give this video a like, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Bye.